Welcome to this deep dive. It's tailored just for you. You shared some really interesting material on volition, karma, and the laws of creation. And I've got to say, these excerpts from In the Light of Truth and Resonances are pretty thought-provoking.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to be exploring some pretty intriguing concepts. Things like the power of your will to shape not just your own life, but the world around you.
Right.
The concept of karma as this kind of natural law.
Uh-huh.
And even some fresh perspectives on figures like Jesus.
Yeah.
To help us unpack all of this, we have our expert guide.
Well, thanks for having me. These sources, they really do offer this unique perspective on spirituality.
Yeah.
They kind of encourage this move away from blind faith and toward understanding these laws.
Yeah.
As forces that actively shape our reality,
Okay, I'm intrigued already.
Yeah.
So let's start with this concept of volition.
Sure.
In the Light of Truth describes it as this magnetic force attracting similar powers and growing like an avalanche. It's almost a little unnerving to think about every choice we make has this ripple effect that just keeps expanding.
Yeah.
That's
a really great way to visualize it.
Yeah.
It's not just about individual actions,
Yeah.
It's about this cumulative effect.
Right.
So imagine your volition as kind of like a rudder, guiding a ship.
Yeah.
Steering toward the light. That leads you to, calm waters, safe harbor.
Mm-hmm.
But heading toward darkness,
Yeah.
That might just throw you right into a storm.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
So in a way, we're constantly creating our own weather patterns, both internally and externally.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This makes me think about this concept of karma, which In the Light of Truth emphasizes is a natural law of cause and effect.
Right. Yeah, it's less about punishment,
Right.
and more about the natural consequences of our actions.
Yeah.
The source puts it pretty bluntly.
Yeah.
It states, what a man sows, that shall he reap. It's as though we're planting seeds, but instead of a garden,
Yeah.
It's our lives, our experiences that are being cultivated.
That's a really good point. But that could feel pretty overwhelming, right?
Yes.
Are we forever bound by our past mistakes? Thankfully, the source offers a more hopeful perspective.
Right.
By explaining how we can mitigate the burden of negative karma.
Absolutely. In the Light of Truth describes good volition as this protective shield.
Oh, okay.
Disintegrating or at least modifying that burden from our past.
Yeah.
Think of it like the Earth's atmosphere.
Okay.
It protects us from harmful cosmic rays, right?
Yeah.
Similarly, consciously choosing good, that can actually shift the trajectory
Wow.
set by past actions.
That's actually pretty empowering. It means we're not just victims of fate.
Right.
We have the agency to change things through our choices in the present.
You got it. And this understanding of volition, this power of our choices.
Yeah.
That has major implications
Oh.
for what happens, after we leave this earthly plane.
Yeah.
In the Light of Truth, it describes a realm
Okay.
called the ethereal world. It's kind of like this transitional space for the departed.
Transitional, so not a final destination.
Right.
What's the purpose of this in-between space?
Well, it's where the separation of the spiritual, from the material continues, allowing the soul to shed its earthly attachments
Okay.
and become more receptive to spiritual truths.
I see.
However, the source also mentions this, spiritual death.
Okay.
This sobering concept where individuals, lacking spiritual striving, they're drawn into disintegration
Right.
with the material world.
So it's not just about physical death,
Right.
but a kind of dissolving of individual consciousness if we haven't cultivated our spiritual selves.
In essence, yes. The source uses a rather stark image,
Yeah.
saying that such an individual will be atomized and mixed in with the primordial seed. He will never again be able to regain his individuality. This really underscores the importance of aligning our will, with the light.
It really makes you rethink the whole concept of living a good life, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not about following rules or trying to earn points, but about understanding these deeper lies and consciously shaping our path, even into the afterlife.
Yeah.
Now, these sources also touch on some intriguing interpretations of Jesus. And I have to admit, this part made me do a double take.
Yeah. Both in the Light of Truth and Resonances, they emphasize that Jesus didn't come to abolish the laws, but to fulfill them.
Right.
It's important, they say, to understand his teachings
Okay.
within their true spiritual context,
Right.
not just at face value.
So it's not about blind faith or literal interpretations, but about seeking that deeper meaning and understanding in his message.
Exactly.
That makes sense. But what really caught my attention was the distinction the sources make between the Son of God and the Son of Man.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I always thought those were interchangeable terms.
That's a common misconception.
Yeah.
Both in the light of truth and resonances, they offer a different perspective.
Yeah.
They explain that the Son of God was this, temporary mediator,
Okay.
destined to return to the divine.
I know.
In contrast, the Son of Man is this eternal mediator who experienced the depths of human suffering to guide us toward the light.
That's a profound distinction.
Yeah.
So one is a divine figure sent for a specific purpose, while the other is eternally connected to humanity through shared suffering.
Exactly.
Do they elaborate on who the Son of Man is?
Well, they go into detail about the immense suffering endured by the Son of Man,
Okay.
to overcome evil and pave the way for humanity's redemption.
Wow.
The excerpts we have don't explicitly name the Son of Man,
Right.
but suggest, his eventual reveal will happen in a time of great need.
Okay, now that's a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
It definitely makes you wonder who this figure might be and how they will play a role in humanity's future.
It does add another layer of intrigue, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
But even without knowing the specifics,
Right.
it reinforces that, the laws and principles Jesus taught are eternal. They're continuing to shape our reality,
Right.
regardless of who embodies them.
That's a really powerful reminder that these truths are timeless,
Yeah.
even if our interpretations evolve.
Exactly.
Now, I know there's more to unpack from these sources,
Yeah.
and I have a feeling things are about to get even more interesting.
Yeah, buckle up.
All right. Okay, so we've established that volition is incredibly powerful and has this direct impact on our experience both in this life and the next.
Right.
But these sources don't stop there. They delve into the very structure of creation itself.
Yeah.
What really struck me was this concept of interconnectedness. This idea that everything is woven together in this cosmic web.
It's a recurring theme in the light of truth and resonances. They suggest it's not just about individual actions having these ripple effects, but about understanding that everything is part of this larger interconnected system.
Right.
Resonances in particular delves a bit deeper into the structure of this system
Okay.
by describing different planes of existence.
Okay. Different planes of existence. That sounds pretty complex.
It is.
Are we talking different dimensions,
Yeah.
parallel universes?
Kind of.
I'm trying to wrap my head around what that actually means.
Think of it more as levels of spiritual density or vibration.
Okay.
Resonances speaks of this pure spiritual realm. It's the highest plane
Okay.
and the source of all creation.
Right.
It describes this realm as being inhabited by primordial beings.
Okay.
They're the first and most powerful beings to emerge.
So these primordial beings reside in the purest form of light, the origin point of everything that exists.
Right.
Where do we humans fit into this grand cosmic picture?
Well, in the light of truth, offers this kind of fascinating perspective on this.
Yeah.
It describes humans as spirit germs.
Spirit germs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Originating from this pure spiritual realm,
Okay.
venturing into the material world to gain self-consciousness.
Okay.
Ultimately, the goal is to return to our spiritual home,
Yeah.
but enriched by the experiences gained during this journey.
So we're cosmic explorers, setting out from the source to gather knowledge and experience with the ultimate goal of returning home, but transformed by our adventures.
That's a really beautiful way to frame it.
Yeah.
Resonances
Yeah.
adds another layer to this
Okay.
by suggesting there are many types of spiritual beings,
Okay.
each playing this unique role in this intricate tapestry of creation.
So it's not just us and these primordial beings.
Right.
Tell me more about these other spiritual players. Who are they and what do they do?
Well, Resonances describes archangels as the pillars of God's throne, beings of immense power and closeness to the divine.
Wow.
Then there are others elves, nixies, gnomes,
Right.
salamanders.
Are we talking about the creatures we often encounter in mythology?
Yeah.
Those elves and gnomes?
That's what Resonances suggests.
Okay.
It posits that these beings, while not readily perceptible to our senses,
Right.
they're actively involved in maintaining balance in the natural world.
That's a fascinating and maybe slightly unnerving concept. It's
Yeah.
like realizing there's this whole unseen world operating around us all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
And this like hidden realm isn't separate from us.
Right.
Resonances emphasizes that even our thoughts and words,
Yeah.
have an impact on it.
Wow.
It states that the human word, although limited in scope,
Mm-hmm.
it reflects the creative power of the divine word.
Whoa. So we're not just passive observers.
Right.
We're active participants in shaping this unseen world with every thought and word. That's a lot of responsibility.
It is a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
It really highlights the importance of choosing our words consciously,
Right.
understanding their power to create or destroy, to uplift or to harm.
Right.
But there's a flip side to this as well. Resonances also talks about how humanity has, through its actions, distorted this delicate natural order.
What do they mean by distorted?
Yeah.
In what ways has this happened?
Well, both sources express this concern that humanity's focus has shifted too far toward intellect and ego,
Right.
neglecting our spiritual core.
Right.
Resonances specifically claims that this overemphasis on the intellect was a major factor in what is often referred to as the fall of man.
So are they saying that by prioritizing intellect and earthly knowledge, we somehow severed our connection to the spiritual realm, causing this imbalance?
That seems to be the argument. Resonances suggest that this disconnect has led to a cascade of issues,
Oh, wow.
from distorted family dynamics to the emergence of false prophets. Essentially, we've created this world that's increasingly out of sync with the natural laws of creation,
Right.
and we're experiencing the consequences of that misalignment.
That's a pretty sobering thought.
Yeah.
And a bit scary, to be honest.
Yeah.
But they also mention this coming judgment, a reckoning for humanity. Does that mean we're doomed?
It doesn't have to.
Is it all downhill from here?
Not necessarily. Both in the light of truth and resonances, they suggest that this judgment, it isn't about punishment,
Okay.
but rather a period of intense transformation and purification.
Okay.
It's about the old order crumbling to make way for something new.
So it's less about fire and brimstone and more about a necessary shaking up of the status quo?
Yeah, like a cosmic reset button of
Yeah.
sorts.
Okay. But how do we navigate this, turbulent transition?
That's where the concept of volition comes back into play.
Okay.
Both sources emphasize that we have this choice to make. To continue down the path of material attachment and spiritual neglect,
Yeah.
or to actively reconnect with our spiritual core.
So it all comes back to the power of choice. Even amidst a cosmic shakeup, we still have the agency to choose our direction. But how do we even begin to make these choices, especially in a world that often feels so chaotic and confusing?
Well, resonances offer some guidance on this,
Okay.
emphasizing the importance of spiritual vigilance,
Okay.
of being mindful of the influences around us.
Uh-huh.
It's about questioning everything,
Right.
not blindly accepting what's popular or convenient,
Right.
but, critically examining our beliefs and actions to ensure that they're aligned with, our highest good.
So in a way, we need to become more discerning,
Yes.
more critical thinkers, not just in a worldly sense, but also in a spiritual sense.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And resonances goes even further, stressing the importance of cultivating intuition,
Right.
that inner voice of wisdom.
Right. Right.
It's about learning to trust our gut feelings.
Yeah.
To pay attention to those subtle nudges that often guide us toward truth and alignment.
So we need to be both discerning and intuitive,
Yes.
both critical thinkers and open to those deeper whispers of guidance. It's like we're being asked to develop this whole new set of skills for navigating this increasingly complex world.
Absolutely. And resonances is very clear about the need to break free from this distorted sense of family.
This is something that keeps coming up in our conversation.
Right.
The role of family seems to be particularly important in these sources.
Yeah.
What are they trying to convey about it?
Resonances suggest that, the modern concept of family, it's become overly focused on material security and comfort, often at the expense of spiritual growth.
Okay.
We cling to these relationships for safety and belonging.
All right.
But in doing so, we may be limiting our potential, keeping ourselves tethered to outdated patterns.
So it's not about abandoning family altogether,
Right.
but about recognizing how those dynamics might be hindering us. Yeah. About stepping outside those comfort zones, even if it feels scary or uncomfortable.
Exactly. And the source even cautions against relationships that prioritize material comfort over, spiritual development, suggesting that, Focusing too much on creating this cozy nest
Yeah.
can actually trap us in this, like, gilded cage, stifling our potential for growth.
It's like they're saying that true growth requires us to step outside those familiar structures,
Right.
to embrace the unknown, even if it feels risky or unsettling.
Exactly. And while this may sound challenging,
Right.
resonances offers this glimmer of hope.
Okay.
Speaking of this coming era of peace and renewal,
Okay.
they describe it as, like, this 1,000-year kingdom of God on earth,
Whoa.
ushered in not by human effort, but by this force that transcends all individual volition,
Wow.
a divine will.
So there's light at the end of the tunnel?
There is.
Even amidst all this talk of judgment and upheaval, there's this promise of something better, a more harmonious future, guided by a higher power.
That seems to be the message.
Okay.
It's about surrendering to something bigger than ourselves,
Yeah.
allowing this divine will to establish a new order,
Okay.
one that's aligned with the true laws of creation.
That's a hopeful thought. But how do we as individuals prepare for this new era? How do we align ourselves with this divine will?
In the Light of Truth, kind of dives into this process of spiritual development,
Okay.
describing the afterlife as this series of planes,
Okay.
each with its own level of spiritual density.
Sorry.
As we progress through these planes, we shed our material coverings and become more and more refined.
It's like we're peeling back the layers of an onion, getting closer and closer to our true essence, our pure spiritual core.
That's an excellent analogy.
Yeah.
And alongside this process of refinement, In the Light of Truth, introduces the concept of symbolic redemption of karma.
Symbolic redemption.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear more about that. What does that mean?
Well, it suggests that through acts of, like, genuine kindness, compassion, and striving for good,
Uh-huh.
we can symbolically redeem the negative karma we've accumulated.
Okay.
It's not about punishment,
Right.
but about choosing this new path,
Okay.
a path of love and service that helps to neutralize the effects of past actions.
So it's not just about understanding these concepts intellectually, but about embodying them in our daily lives,
Right.
expressing them through our actions and choices.
Precisely. In the Light of Truth goes on to offer some specific guidance on how to do this,
Okay.
particularly within the context of relationships.
Okay, here we are again with relationships.
Yeah,
It seems like such a central theme in these sources.
it is.
What kind of guidance do they offer this time?
Well, In the Light of Truth stresses the importance of choosing a marriage partner based on, like, spiritual compatibility rather than material considerations.
Okay.
It suggests that true love is rooted in shared spiritual values,
Right.
this deep soul connection.
It's not just, physical attraction or shared interests.
So it's about seeking a true soulmate, someone who aligns with us on a deeper level.
Yeah. And it even goes as far as to say that, like, if a divorce occurs, it's because that essential spiritual harmony was lacking.
That's quite a statement.
It is.
It really highlights the importance of seeking relationships that support our spiritual growth.
Absolutely.
And both sources also provide these, like, interesting insights
Yeah.
into the role of women in this grand scheme of creation.
Right.
I'm intrigued. What do they have to say about the role of women?
Well, In the Light of Truth suggests that women possess this unique gift
Okay.
for intuitive perception,
Okay.
this heightened sensitivity to the subtle realms.
Okay.
It claims that they have this, like, profound influence on the spiritual nature of their offspring,
Right.
essentially shaping the future of humanity.
Wow. That's a lot of power and responsibility.
It is. And the source cautions against vanity and shamelessness in women.
Suggesting that these traits can distort their innate spiritual gifts and hinder their ability to fulfill their higher purpose.
It's not about judging women or their choices, but about recognizing the immense power they hold
Right.
and encouraging them to use it for good, to become beacons of light in a world that desperately needs their guidance.
Exactly. And Resonances echoes this sentiment, emphasizing the importance of grace and purity in women,
Right.
suggesting that these qualities radiate true beauty, a beauty that emanates from the soul, not from, like, outward appearances or conformity to societal standards.
It's about aligning with our truest selves, expressing our highest potential, not just as women, but as human beings.
Yeah. But Resonances also offers this critique of how women have been manipulated, particularly in, like, modern society.
That's right. The source suggests that women have been influenced by, like, darker forces,
Yeah.
steered towards vanity and material pursuits,
Mhm.
distracting them from their spiritual potential. This manipulation, it claims, has disrupted the social order, creating imbalances that ripple out into all areas of life.
Exactly.
That's a powerful statement.
It is.
It speaks to the need for women to reclaim their power, to break free from these limiting patterns and step into their rightful roles as, like, spiritual leaders and guides.
Yes. And it's this call to action for all of us, men and women alike,
Right.
to become more conscious, to challenge the status quo, and to choose a path that leads toward greater harmony and spiritual awakening.
This has been an incredible journey so far. We've covered so much ground.
We have.
From the power of volition to the intricacies of the afterlife.
Right.
And it all seems to circle back to the importance of choosing our path consciously, both individually and collectively.
And there's still more to explore.
There is.
In the Light of Truth, in particular,
Okay.
offers further insights into the spiritual world,
Okay.
challenging conventional interpretations,
Okay.
and encouraging us to look deeper.
I'm ready for another round of mind-expanding concepts.
Okay, good.
What else do these sources have in store for us? We've been on quite a journey exploring these concepts of volition, karma,
Yeah.
the intricate workings of creation.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's one overarching theme that keeps emerging, it's this emphasis on personal responsibility.
Oh, yeah.
It's not about waiting for a savior or some divine intervention,
Right.
but realizing that we each have the power to shape our destiny.
That's a key takeaway from these sources, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's about recognizing our inherent agency,
Right.
In the Light of Truth, puts it pretty directly. Therefore, awake at last and become acquainted with the laws in creation.
Whoa.
It's not just a suggestion, it's a call to action.
It's like a wake-up call, shaking us out of complacency and saying, hey, pay attention. You're not just along for the ride, you're the one holding the steering wheel.
Right.
But it's not just about understanding these laws on an intellectual level, is it?
Exactly. In the Light of Truth distinguishes between, worldly cleverness and true spiritual understanding. Right.
It's about moving beyond book smarts
Yeah.
and developing this, deeper intuitive grasp of these principles.
So it's about becoming spiritually savvy, not just street smart or book smart.
I like that. And resonances kind of adds another layer to this by emphasizing the importance of honing our intuitive perception.
Right.
It's like we have this internal compass, this inner knowing that can guide us
Yeah.
if we learn to listen.
It makes me think of those moments when we just have a gut feeling about something,
Yeah.
even if we can't logically explain it.
Mhm.
But how do we develop that intuitive muscle? How do we learn to trust those inner whispers?
Well, both sources kind of emphasize the importance of stillness,
Right.
cultivating inner silence.
Yeah.
In the Light of Truth suggests that, by quieting the mental chatter, we create space for those intuitive insights to emerge.
It's like turning down the volume on all the external noise so we can finally hear those subtle whispers of our soul.
That's a great way to put it.
And resonances cautions against overthinking,
Okay.
reminding us that getting lost in the labyrinth of our thoughts
Yeah.
can actually block us from accessing those deeper levels of knowing.
So it's not about shutting off our brains completely, but finding that sweet spot, that balance between thinking and being, analyzing and experiencing. It's about quieting the mind without losing our critical faculties. Now, these sources also touch on some mind-bending concepts about time and space.
Yeah, they do.
And I have to confess, this is where I start to feel a bit out of my depth.
In the Light of Truth really challenges our typical understanding of time and space,
Okay.
suggesting that, our earthly conceptions, they don't hold true in the spiritual realm.
Okay.
It states that life in the ethereal world stands above earthly conceptions of time and space.
Okay, so it's not saying that time and space don't exist.
Right.
But they operate differently in those higher realms.
Precisely. And this has profound implications for how we understand things like karma and destiny. If time isn't linear, as we experience it here, then the past, present, and future are all interconnected,
Wow.
influencing each other in ways we may not fully grasp.
That's quite a concept to wrap your head around. It's like saying our choices today aren't just shaping tomorrow, but also rippling back into yesterday.
Right.
It really throws a wrench into our usual cause and effect thinking.
It does, doesn't it? It challenges us to expand our awareness beyond the limitations of our earthly perceptions
Right.
and embrace this more fluid, interconnected reality.
And speaking of expanded awareness, these sources also delve into this intriguing subject of clairvoyance.
Clairvoyance. Now, that's a topic that sparks a lot of curiosity.
Oh, yeah.
Most people think of it as, seeing the future or reading minds.
Yeah.
But is that what these sources are talking about?
Well, while those abilities might be aspects of clairvoyance, In the Light of Truth emphasizes that true clairvoyance is about something much deeper.
Okay.
It's not just this psychic ability,
Right.
but a profound spiritual understanding. So it's not just about perceiving things that are hidden from ordinary sight,
Right.
but also about interpreting those visions correctly,
Uh-huh.
understanding their spiritual significance.
Yes, it warns against seeking clairvoyance without the proper, spiritual foundation,
Okay.
suggesting that doing so can lead to misinterpretations and distortions.
Right.
It's like having this powerful tool without knowing how to use it safely and effectively.
That makes sense. It highlights the importance of spiritual development as the basis for exploring those expanded states of awareness. We've covered so much.
We have.
Volition, karma, the afterlife, the structure of creation, and now clairvoyance.
Uh-huh.
My head is spinning with all these fascinating concepts.
And we're not done yet. In the Light of Truth goes on to challenge conventional interpretations of biblical stories,
Oh, really?
offering this unique perspective on figures like Lucifer
Okay.
and even the concept of the Holy Grail.
Okay, now you've really piqued my curiosity.
Yeah.
What kind of unconventional interpretations are we talking about?
Well, for example, it suggests that Lucifer,
Yeah,
traditionally viewed as the embodiment of evil,
right.
might actually play this necessary role in creation.
Wait, Lucifer is necessary. I'm not sure I'm following that. How can the force representing darkness and evil be essential for good?
Well, in the Light of Truth presents Lucifer as this force of opposition,
Okay.
as the Antichrist,
Yeah.
whose role is to test and strengthen humanity's resolve.
Okay.
It suggests that, we need darkness to appreciate the light,
Right.
challenges to fuel our growth.
Mm.
It's like saying that without resistance, there can be no true strength.
That's a very different way of looking at it.
It is.
So it's not about fearing Lucifer,
Right.
but understanding his purpose within the grand scheme of things, recognizing him as this catalyst for growth.
That's the essence of it.
Yeah.
It's about seeing even the forces that appear negative as having a role to play in our evolution. And this source also offers a fascinating perspective on the Holy Grail.
The Holy Grail, that legendary symbol of spiritual purity and enlightenment, what does it say about that?
Well, it suggests that the Holy Grail isn't merely a metaphor or a symbol,
Okay.
but a real, tangible object.
Oh, wow.
This vessel guarded by, spiritual beings
Yeah.
and radiating this powerful blessing.
So it's an actual object that exists somewhere, not just a concept.
That's what it's suggesting.
What kind of blessing does it offer?
Well, the source describes it as this force that can be received by those deemed spiritually worthy.
Okay.
It's not something that can be earned through worldly achievement,
Right.
but rather a gift bestowed upon those who have purified themselves
Okay.
and aligned with the light.
So it's like a conduit for divine grace, a tangible representation of spiritual attainment. It's not about striving for personal gain,
Right.
but aligning ourselves with a higher purpose.
Exactly.
And in that alignment, we become receptive to this blessing.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
And it ties back to the central message of these sources.
Yeah.
Spiritual development is the key to unlocking our true potential,
Right.
both as individuals and as a collective.
Wow. We've gone from the power of individual choice to the intricate structure of creation, and even touched upon some mind-bending theological concepts.
Yeah.
It's been an incredible exploration.
And it's just the beginning, wouldn't you say?
It feels like it.
These sources are so rich with insights and provocative ideas.
Yeah.
They invite endless contemplation.
Right.
They challenge us to question our assumptions, to see the world through a new lens,
Yeah.
and to embrace the possibility of this more spiritually awakened future.
I definitely feel that sense of expanded possibility. It's like these sources have rekindled that spark of curiosity, that sense of wonder about the big questions, the mysteries of life and the universe.
And that's what a good deep dive should do.
Yeah.
Ignite that spark
Yeah.
and empower you to continue exploring these profound ideas on your own.
Well, folks, that wraps up our deep dive into volition, karma, and the laws of creation.
Oh, yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground.
A lot.
But remember, this is just the starting point.
Mm-hmm.
We encourage you to revisit the source material, to ponder these concepts,
Yeah.
and to see how you can integrate them into your own life.
Absolutely. And as a final thought to leave you with, consider the implications of this statement from resonances. The power of the human word reflects, in a limited way, the creative power of the divine word. How might this understanding change the way we use language in our daily lives?
That's a powerful question to ponder. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey of discovery. Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.